Rogers, and welcome to SharePoint Power Hour. This is our show on Wednesdays at 11 Central, where we've been doing this for about over 6 years now, talking about out-of-the-box things you can do in SharePoint and Office 365 without having to be a programmer, just cool, out-of-the-boxy kind of business user / citizen developer type fun things. And when you join my newsletter, you get to vote on the topics. So you all voted today for to talk about these new Teams actions that have been added in Power Automate. That what they do is you can run these actions from Power Automate, which in a flow, which will send an adaptive card to Teams, which can be a form or a button, something you want somebody to actually fill in or respond to, and then the flow will actually sit there and wait for their response, and then you can do something with their response after that. And so before, you could post adaptive cards, but you couldn't really get a response or do anything with the response or know necessarily what the response was unless you just looked in the flow log. So actually the flow wouldn't record their response. Their response didn't go anywhere. It was just in Teams. So now the response goes somewhere, and now you can do some fun interactive things. Now this is a very creative thing. I have mentioned before, I'm not the most creative person in the world. So there are a lot of sort of templates out there though. And so as we kind of talk about this, that the fun thing about having this be live and us having a chat is that we can start brainstorming and thinking of cool ideas, because sky's the limit with Flow. There are hundreds of different connectors and cool stuff you can do. So this is just kind of expand your mind as to all the possibilities of what it's going to be capable of. So we use Slack for our chat, and so there's a little form, a little link in wherever you're watching this video to fill out the form to join for the first time, or otherwise, if you've been here before, it's slack.iwmentor.com. And then that is, that's where we all had this conversation the whole time. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and dive into a little bit more about this topic. So we've had a Power Hour about Teams and adaptive cards before. So this is just, again, this is more able to get an actual response when you send something to Teams, as opposed to just sending some lovely graphic or something cool looking to Teams. You can actually ask for a response. So adaptive cards are, it's kind of done in code, but they do have a nice little visual designer. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'll share my screen. I'll show you just an example of something that I have been doing, something that I'll just kind of show you a test of what I've been trying out. And I've got a couple of different accounts in here that I'm logged in as, that I'm kind of toggling between them. All right. So I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to kick off this flow, and then I'll show you the flow and how it works, but I just want to show you kind of the end result of something that's possible. All right, so this is going to be a travel request form. And just real quick, you can manually kick off flows from within Teams. You can go in here and go to Flow and install this little app if you haven't installed it yet. And you can actually list flows here, and any flows that you have that are manually triggered on a schedule, you can just say run flow whatever and give the number. I think that the reason the flows I created today aren't showing here is maybe just this hasn't been refreshed, but they're all set to run manually. So just wanted to show you that button does exist in, that Flows is an app in Teams, and you can actually do additional things with your flows just directly here in Teams. Okay, so this is the flow I just kicked off. It's a travel request form. So I say, where are you going? And why are you going there? And when. I've got a little date picker. And submit. And then I'm actually doing just everything in Teams. So Garth is my manager. So Garth is going to get a little pop-up in Teams as well. So here is, I'm logged in as Garth here. See Garth. Garth is in Teams and he gets a little pop-up directly in Teams, and it says travel request to Hawaii, requester Laura. It's got the date. It's got the little text that I typed in here. When's the start date? What type of trip is it? And then I can approve or reject. I have it so that when I click approve, just for fun, I wanted to show you how you could put additional fields in here. So I just said, well, when they approve, just pick the date you want them to return. I know that's not the most logical thing, but just so you can have something specific you want to know from them when they click approve. Have fun. And then if they reject it, it actually closes. It doesn't ask them, because I wanted to see how to make it so it pops something out if they click approve, but not if they click reject. So if you click reject, it just submits it and you're done. And it had it so that if you click approve, it asks for more information. Pretty neat, right? So now it's been approved. And so, you know, whatever you would want to do next in your flow, you want to send something to SharePoint, send somebody an email, whatever you want to happen. So let's go look at, first of all, the designer. Let me see, let's start from scratch with this designer. Sorry, I've got so many windows open. Let me get the right thing here. Okay, so you have all these samples, and I put the samples page in the chat. So I have these adaptivecards.io/samples. And as you click through each sample, it shows you on the right what it's going to look like. So a lot of them are really cool looking and have maybe some conditional formatting. Here's one where you're picking different types of foods, and depending on what you pick, it actually asks you different questions below. So that's going to give you some of that logic. And then here's just an image gallery. Now this is an input form. So this is kind of what I used for the travel request, where I had like the little company logo over here and stuff about the travel request and different fields, and then just a submit button. So that's nice. It's a nice simple form to be able to get to kind of see what some of those look like. And then here, this one's just called inputs, and it's got just a whole bunch of different types of inputs so you can see what they look like. And again, we kind of talked about this last time we did this. It's just got a lot of little interesting looking, not all of these are forms that are asking for information, but this one could be like, that's pretty cool. That's an expense approval. So that's the full expense report that somebody is submitting, and this would maybe pop up for the manager. And then the manager, look how it's got approve, but if they click reject, then they have to type something extra, but if they click approve, they don't. So you'd be able to kind of learn and get the logic out of that. So again, just a lot of great little samples you can try. So let's go ahead and just go to any of these. You can click try it yourself. So I'll go to like an input form, and I've got my resolution cranked up really high, so this is kind of awkward looking, but here's where, and Joelle's not here, so I'm gonna try and kind of keep an eye on the chat window. What do you all think so far? You all can see me and hear me, and have you seen these before? Is that something that you think people who are working in Teams, that it makes it easy for them to just be able to fill out forms right there in Teams? And what do you think about all the little cool ways that you can make them look? Now, this is kind of codey, but it does have a nice little interface. So for example, here's the title. I could say, for my title, I can click on the ones they already have in here, and I could just, you know, call it something. Absence request form. And then fill in this request. And then, let's see, Craig says, any permission limitations? Well, we're not putting data anywhere yet. So whoever the flow runs as, if you wanted to like send data to SharePoint, then you just have to make sure that the person the flow is running as has access to SharePoint, but the flow is running as whoever triggers it. So that depends on your trigger, Craig. So because the person that's interacting with the form in Teams, the data is just in Teams, and then flow is where you define where you want the data to go. So the flow, whoever triggered the flow, that's who it's running as. It's not running as like the person filling out the form necessarily or their manager. Oh, yeah. Can you build an adaptive card using outputs from data operations? Yes, you can. So that's why I wanted to show you two different adaptive cards. So the first one I showed you in that example was the travel request. And then the second adaptive card was sent to the manager, and that was showing data from the other adaptive card, or it could show data from anywhere. And then it had their, dynamic data, and they can approve or reject it. So, but this is kind of nicer than, there is that cool approvals action that gives them an adaptive card, gives them approve or reject, but you can't customize the way the adaptive card looks or what it does when they click approve or reject. So this gives you a little bit more customization. No, this doesn't have any kind of different licensing. These actions are not any kind of premium actions. These are just new actions, just regular actions in flows. So, so what you can do is customize this, and like disclaimer, I don't need that. And then like this little thing that says properties title, this is going to be whatever I want the first question to be. So like absence, description, because that's just a text box. And then this little property 0 placeholder thing, that's sort of the hint text that it's going to show them. Description of why you're absent. And then, so each of these little titles that they have in here, you can edit it over here in this nice little visual interface. And you even have things like spacing, separators, alignment. And so you can change all these over here in this nice visual interface, and that will change the code. And all the code that it's generating is down here at the bottom. So, and I can even, since I'm customizing this, I can just delete these, and I can say like absence reason. And then instead of having this little text box, this is a text box right here, I can go pick some other kind of container. So I can this is just a drag and drop interface that lets me pick different types of little containers. So this is a input choice set that I'm putting here. And then I can have a placeholder if I want to. And then here are all my choices. So I can say sick. And then this is just like what the data is going to say, and then what the way the data is going to be stored. If you want it to be like a display name and a system name for each piece of data, I'm just going to have them be the same. So add another choice. So you get the picture. So I'm adding different reasons here. And then I can even do rich text. I can insert, this one's got like a little image that I can insert. This could be dynamic image if I want to. If you're doing an image and an adaptive card, the image needs to be a URL to something that already exists, like in SharePoint. So it's going to need a URL. You can't actually upload your image into the adaptive card itself. But notice that I just have all these different types of things that I can insert here, like a date picker, and even a time picker, and numbers, and different, a whole bunch of different things. And then I can give them names over here like this. This ID is going to be helpful when you're looking at your data that people have submitted. So like this ID, by default, it said my name. I'm going to call it my destination, or let's see, my description. And then I'm going to say my reason. I'm going to put an ID in here and say my reason. And that will be like what the data, the name of the data when we start dealing with flow. And then my date. Of course, you might want to have 2 dates in there if it's an absence request. And again, a whole bunch of other little types of controls, just like you saw in a lot of other little samples. Okay, so then what we do is we go and get all this text, all this just code down here at the bottom, and I'm just going to copy that to my clipboard. So then I'm going to do a really simple flow, and then I'll do, you know, we can get more interactive with it. And that's when I want to kind of start get you all thinking about what you would want to trigger this. I'm just doing manual triggers so far, but what you would want to kick this off, this thing that's popping up in front of someone. Do you want it to trigger from somebody doing something in SharePoint, or happen on a certain day, or what? Kind of get thinking about your scenarios there. Okay, so then when I manually trigger this flow, I'm just going to show you this action in a really simple way before I start adding a bunch of other stuff to it. So I'll go ahead and narrow this down and show you the adaptive card actions. This is just posting an adaptive card to a user, posting adaptive card to a Teams channel, and wait for a response. Now this wait for a response is the part that's new. So you already had the ability to post it to a user or post to a channel, and that's what we talked about in our last, that power hour, where I showed how you could just take some kind of piece of news and post it and make it look pretty in a channel. But again, that was just, somebody was just viewing it. They couldn't take action on it. So the ones where you can wait for a response, these 2 new ones, those are the ones where you can take action. So you just have to decide if you want to post it to a channel or post it just to a specific user. Now, since it's just me and I'm testing this, I'm just going to put my little admin account in here so it pops up for me so you can see it. And then this message is where I paste all this code that I just copied. Now here's where you can go in here and make it dynamic. So I could say, let's see, the only dynamic data I have right now is just about the thing getting triggered. So absence request sent by, and I'm just going to show you a way that I could have dynamic data in here. And then this is just going to have like the name of the person that kicked it off. See, so you would go through here and insert all of your different pieces of dynamic data in here. Now this one needs to be an image. This was that one that looked like this thing. That needs to be an image. So it has to be a URL if you're going to put an image in there. So I just have a URL over in my clipboard of just this some little version of my logo that I'll stick in there, and that is in SharePoint. So that is in a SharePoint site that people have to have access to that. So whoever's looking at this adaptive card does need to have SharePoint permissions to where the images are that I'm referring to. And then you have a lot of little additional pieces of information. So this is, once they respond to the adaptive card, like they click the button, they click submit, whatever it is, what do you want it to tell them? So thanks for responding. You can say something like that. And then should it update the card? So when I responded to that last little test that I did, let's see, let me go find that one. See, when I responded to the flow, I filled out my form and I submitted it. This is whether I want it to change the card. If I don't say that I want it to update the card, then the card still looks exactly the same. It still just looks like a form. It doesn't change at all. So I do want it to change, and I'm actually putting the name, dynamically putting the name of my manager that it's submitting this to. So let me go back to this. And then the summary is what it's going to show over on the left. And I'll get to your question in 1 second. When I get this chat, this is what it's going to say right here, I think, is the little summary. Let's see. And then is it an alert? And that will make it actually show as an alert in Teams, which will alert them to it. Otherwise, they won't know it's there, maybe. So, yes, I do want to alert them. So this is just really simple. I'm just going to manually trigger it, and it's going to go to me, and it's just going to have these questions. And I'm not even doing anything with the answers to the questions. I just want to show you this sort of in its most simple form. So I'll just kick this off, run it. And then I'll run it and I'll answer a question. So it's saying I want to connect to Teams. Yeah. Okay. Now your question was, is the adaptive card in the Flow apps section to access, or is this a separate program in the Office 365 suite? What? I'm not sure what you're talking about, Craig. So the action that I was just using is just 2 new actions in here to post adaptive card and wait for a response. The little interface where you build the adaptive card, that is at adaptivecards.io/designer. It's got little samples here. And I put that link in the general channel already. Does that answer your question? So it is completely, there's no link to this adaptive card designer in Flow. This is just a separate Microsoft site. So that's why I gave you a link to it over there. Cool. So now let's go see what it did. It said it posted, yeah, so Zach just put adaptive card. The thing is, when you go to adaptivecards.io, that one's kind of confusing. Where'd it go? Because it takes you here, and then you just have to know to go to the samples. So if you end up getting all lost, like scrolling through here, trying to find the samples, that's what I do half the time. You just have to know to go click on the samples up here to get to where what I was showing you, and then you click try it yourself to get to the designer. Cool. I don't know anything about the colors, Mark. I have not tried anything with the colors. I have no idea. I would just dig into the code and see what they look like and try them out. I definitely have not even delved into that. Okay, so let's go look at what it did. Okay, so this is the one that I just kicked off. So it pops it up in my chat. So if I was over here or something, it would actually, I would see the little alert. It takes me over here. So this is the form I just created. So sick with flu, there's my description, sick, and then I've even got a date picker. Now I didn't put, remember when in the little designer interface, I didn't put a piece of text above my date picker, so you can't even tell what it's for. So that would have helped to have a little piece of text above it. And then I submit it. All right, so then I remember I typed thanks for responding, and then that's the little response that they get after they submit it. Let's go back to the flow. So now it ran. Let me go look at when it ran. Okay, it said it ran successfully. Okay, so this is kind of what I do need to know this stuff. So I've got this is the data that it gave me back. Okay, so I'll just kind of keep in mind that that's where that is. I'm just going to copy that. Let me see. This is just regular Power Automate flow. Yes, this is just flow. And you probably have these new actions too. Okay. So then what do you want to happen? So what I noticed, let's go ahead and go into a couple of the ones that I created to show you how I did like this travel request. All right. So let's go ahead and dig into the actual travel request so you can see how I built it, and then we'll talk about some gotchas. So I ended up not needing that. I was trying to figure out how to get the user photo, but I finally figured it out, and I'll show you where that is. Okay, so I am getting their manager. I'm doing an action as soon as the flow gets triggered to go get somebody's manager. And that's just going to be the manager of whoever triggered it. And you might want to have maybe a flow that has an input that asks you someone's name, email, and then go get their manager. But it just, depends on what your business process is. So I'm just getting this person's manager just for fun. And then I've got this is my action where I'm going to do my travel request. So let's go over to my adaptive cards designer. Let's see where I've got my travel request. Let me close that. I've got too many of these open now. Travel request. There we go. Okay. So I just put requester : I put created, and then this got this little description placeholder, which is just a text block. And then this is a cool little, it's called a fact set. So actually this is the one that goes to the manager. I'm sorry. This is the one that goes to the manager telling them about the person that just submitted a travel request to them. This is the actual absence request that I just created. Good Lord. Sorry. Where did my travel request go? You know what I can do is I can go back into my flow and just go grab it, and just go grab that. Because I just left all these little windows open. Okay. Let me go grab this and just put it back in the little travel, in the little designer. And that way, close some of these. I gave you all these links here in the general channel, by the way. Okay. This is the actual travel request. See, I lost my work in the designer here, but then I just went back into flow and grabbed the code out of the flow that I had already created and just took this and copied it and pasted it over in this bottom part. And now I've got my form again here that I'm designing. So you don't ever have to go design it directly in that big, long, ugly thing in Flow. You have this nice visual designer. So I have my destination, where I'm going, my reason, start date, and then I have my little multiple choice, and that's one of those input choice sets. And yes, you can write this to SharePoint. The idea is you can put it anywhere. You can write it anywhere. You can start from SharePoint before you send the card to the adaptive card to Teams. And then after they respond, you can go take the data and put it in SharePoint. So sky's the limit. All right, so here's what I did is it's got this submit button built in already in that little input form that I used as my template when I started. So all I did was I went in and labeled and just gave these better descriptions, and then copied and pasted that code over into Flow here. So that's the one that goes to the person that's going on the travel request. And I did replace, I've got this URL in SharePoint to the little company logo that it's displaying at the top of the travel request. All right, so then I'm giving them in my update message, this is the first piece of dynamic data, is remember I got my manager. So I'm just saying travel request submitted to, and that's where it told me travel request submitted to Garth Fort. So it's telling me that I submitted to him. So then The next card, I'm doing another post an adaptive card to a Teams user and wait for a response. And that one I'm sending to the manager. So that's how you know who it goes to next. And this one has dynamic data in it. So it says travel requests to, and this is where I put, I got my destination. Remember how I labeled those? Over in here, remember I said labeled it and called it ID my destination. So that's what those are going to be. Those labels are going to show over in Flow when you're dealing with that raw data. So that's why it helps to give them a good little ID over there. So I said travel request to, and I put the whatever destination the person before had filled in. And then this little magic right here is going to show the person's picture. It's going to show the person's picture when I'll go ahead and just run it again so you can see what I'm talking about. The person who's submitting the travel request, I just kind of hacked into one of the pages in SharePoint to figure out what the code was, just to show a user photo. And then, so that's what their picture is. And I'll put that in the chat. It is over in the second one. So this is just going to show the picture on the travel request to the manager. It's just showing the person's picture who submitted it. Equals, and then I'll put email. And the part in the asterisk is the part you would want to replace. I'll just copy and paste that in there, just in case you all want to play with that. And then, so what I did was, so I'll take that where it's got email, and then that's where I'm saying, I'm getting the email from the person who filled it in, which in this case is just the same person who kicked it off. So that is going to have that dynamic data in it to show their actual picture. Okay, so then I'm telling the manager who the requester is. I'm telling them when it was created, and then it's telling them their reason, when they plan on going to the trip, what type it is. So in all these little pieces in the adaptive card, so this is the one that's showing to the manager. So it's going to tell them the information the person had submitted. So this is this is what's called a fact set. So if you just want to quickly list a bunch of fields and just say this column name, this value, this column name, this value, this column, this value, and you don't need to have them listed all in some fancy way down the screen, you can just use a fact set and you just type the name of each column and just keep adding new facts. So I just put their start and type start date here and type trip type here. And then over in the flow, see, I'm putting the actual value of, for start, that's where I'm putting my dynamic data. So it says start colon, and the value is going to be the actual start date that they're going on the trip. That's dynamic from the person who filled in the form. And then the type is my type. So that's why it helps all those little, the way I gave them all little good names in that ID property. That's why it helps to have good names for them. That makes sense. All right, I don't think there's anything else in there that's dynamic. And then I did notice, so the part where it asks them additional question if they click approve, but it doesn't ask them if they click reject, that was already in this little sample that I picked. So let's see, let me go back to the samples. See, when you're trying out all the samples, this one's called activity update, and notice that this one pops something down and this one doesn't. So I just use that same code to make mine so that when they click approve, it asks them something additional, and otherwise I have the reject button just rejecting it. So let's see, go back to flow. Oh, so go back to the designer, because when you click approve and it pops that other little thing out, that part doesn't show here. It only shows in the code. So I had to just kind of, this part was kind of hard. So this is going to be like kind of more advanced level. So I went in here and they had a little thing that said pick a date and type a comment. So all I did was change theirs to my field name and called it return date, and just changed it to say pick a date and add a comment. So I didn't change much about it, but apparently when you have those little hidden things, you have to just edit it directly in the code because there isn't like a visual interface for it when it's hidden. I don't know, maybe you would do it in the visual way and then hide it later or something like that. That is going to be definitely like a couple of hours of your life to figure that out if you're not a JSON writer programmer. And then reject is just a regular button that's going to do action.submit. So action.submit is what actually finishes what they're doing and submits the form, and then they're done. So that's what those are doing. All right, so let's go back over to my flow. So then this is what goes to the manager. Now, what do you want to happen next? So let's see, email. Do you want to send something to SharePoint or send somebody an email about it? So I'll just say maybe send. Now, I could post another adaptive card to the person who submitted it and letting them know, but just for fun, I'm going to mix it up and do something different. I'll do an email instead. So I'll just say I want this to go to the person who triggered it. And what do I want the subject to be? So travel to, and then I can just put that destination that I had originally filled in up here. And let's see. So what is the response from this person? I don't know. See, I have no, so this is what I came across pretty quickly in trying this out, is that sometimes, and I'm not sure if it depends on how far down in the flow you are or what action you're using, but sometimes your response information is not showing here. So this one, I renamed this action, I called it adaptive. This one is showing. This is all the initial data I submitted. But this one that goes to the manager, it's not showing anything. I'm going to rename it, call it manager. And, but there's no data. So there is a way to do that though. And I'll show you how to get to that data. So let me go ahead and save this and run it one more time and show you how you can get to it. Oh, y'all have so many ideas. Here, let me see. I have using Flow to take an email with a menu as an attachment and post it to a specific channel for the cafeteria with this week's menu and an adaptive card. Yeah, so that sounds like fun. So this just is going to be ramping that up to if you want them to actually click something on the adaptive card to say like, what's my favorite meal or something, and you'd click on a piece of food. So okay, so just let me save that, and I'm going to test it again. Oh, that one's already got a test running, so let me go. I don't want to have too many of these. Okay, so I ran this, and it says submit the travel request to your manager. Now, I think I just changed this. Okay. I don't know if there's a way to do any kind of required fields in this, by the way. I haven't seen anything off the top of my head about that, so that would be kind of important to know, huh? Okay, my travel request was submitted to Garth Fort, and then I have to log in as Garth Fort over here. Now, this is what I was talking about with the picture. So that's that code that I just posted in the chat that dynamically shows me the picture of whoever the person was that submitted it. So that's the code that I use. So now the manager actually sees my picture, and then the manager can click reject. And so notice when they reject, it just goes away. And then let me run it one more time. Come on, save. And then I'll show you again when they approve, and we'll go look at that raw data and show you how you can get to the raw data even when you can't see it. And that's like pro level flow kind of stuff, like digging into the code. So I tried to start off pretty simple by just showing you a manual trigger and then just a simple adaptive card with a few fields in it with somebody responding to a form. And then I took it up another notch with having some of the responses to the form actually generate another form that goes to a manager and then have, get their response. So now what we're doing is troubleshooting when you're getting the adaptive card that waits for the response, and then you can't see any of the response data, and we're going to talk about how you can get to that raw data to do something with it. Okay, so now this is running and waiting for me to do my thing. Let's see. So now, see, I've got this form again. Don't use tab. And when do I want to go? I'll just go to tomorrow and surprise her. Just kidding. Okay, so I submitted it to Garth, and then Garth is my manager, and Garth now sees this. See, it's got the dynamic data in it from and then now see when I click approve, it actually gives me, so like when do you want me to come back? It gives me a date to pick. Have fun. Okay, so that's the manager's response. Okay, so now let's go look at the raw data in the flow. And notice that the send email, I didn't finish doing this send email, so that's fine that it errored out. Okay, this is what I need right here. This is the data that it gives me back. So it's got data and return date and comment. And so what I can do is I need to know what those are called. So let's see. Response. Okay, so again, I don't have any of that info. I have from that first card up here, but I don't have the info from the second card for some reason. So this is if you ever need to get to the data and you don't see it there. I did this body thing and I put the name of the action, which is manager. Body of manager, question mark. Yeah. Okay, and then a quotes, and then I know this is just the syntax you have to use in Flow. Data. And then another one and return date. Okay, so I have to know that's why I named it a short name. Because if it's got spaces in it, then you got to do all these underscores. So I just let's try it out before I'll just put it in a compose action real quick. Compose action is just if I don't want to have to go actually send an email and wait for it to come. I just want to quickly just run the flow and see if I can see some certain data. So date. And then, oops, I got to put that in as an expression. And then their comment. And then that, instead of return date, that would be off the page comment. So this is like fun with raw data and Flow. Ugh. All right, saving it. Now let's see what that looks like. I wonder what the error was when it was sending this. I guess it was just, I didn't even look at what the error was, but okay. Okay, the fun part about testing this one is now I gotta test it and go to 2 people every time I test it. So here's this form again. Okay, Garth gets it. Garth's gonna approve it and pick a date, the 19th. Okie dokie. Okay, now this ran. It failed again on the email. That's fine. I just wanted to see the compose. Okay, look at that. So that is my raw data that I couldn't get to because I couldn't see it, didn't give me the option. But now I can actually see how I can get to it. Now let me show you again what that formula looks like. Okay, so I ran it once and then I copied that raw data. So I copied the raw data just out of that response after the flow ran, and I went and grabbed like everything that it gave me back after it waited for the response, and that's this. And then I could see that there's, see this over here, data, see, is because there's a sort of a section in here called data before it's got an open bracket. This is sort of like a drilling down in JSON, and they go down to another level and go to return date. So I think that data is always going to be what they respond with, but again, I'm not positive because I'm not a programmer. I think that's where it's always going to come from the adaptive card called data. And then return date and then comment. That's what the field is called. And so then for comment, I just did, the only thing different is comment. Messy, huh? Right? But at least there's a way to get to it. Now, I noticed that the response text, this submit action ID just says okay. Let's go see where it gets the submit action ID, because notice I don't have anything about like the actual word approve or reject, because I didn't put that in that adaptive card that I designed. I didn't put the word approved and reject in the data. So let's go look at where that is coming from, that okay. Because I don't want it to say okay, I want it to say something different if they approve or reject it. So let's go over to my little designer surface thingy. Okay, so here's my approve and reject, but the data doesn't say approve or reject. Oh, look, maybe ID. Let's see. Let's see. I'm just putting my name in it just so it'll stick out from everything else. And then reject is first button, and then there are two buttons because they click approve and then they click submit, because remember that part, all that part is hidden. So look, see, action.submit title okay. I think that is going to be approved. I'm making this very descriptive, so I'll know when it gets submitted, so I'll know. So, oh, the problem now is that now I just edited the copy of it. That was the original copy. So what I really need to do is, since I don't want to lose all the stuff that I already did in here, is I want to go take this stuff. See, I've got all this dynamic stuff in here. I don't want to lose that. So my options are to copy all this over to the little design surface and then redo it and then have to reinsert all of these, or I'd have to go in here and just try and type my you know, my little responses all in the right place. So I'll just put approve right here. So yeah. The title of it is approve. So when they submit it, that one says approve and that one says reject. So that's what data, so it should say now approve instead of okay when it comes across. Okay, so the thing I just did over here is not making a bit of difference because I didn't feel like starting all over with this thing. I didn't use this code. Okay, so let's go test that. Wait, I'm not sure why the test failed with the email though. Make sure I save that. Oh man, I've only got 10 minutes left. Oh, was going to try some just fun, more creative things. Oh, I hate that error. Usually when I get that error, it just means I need to like export my whole flow and re-import it and like start a new one because it's just corrupt or something. Okay. Saving it and testing it yet again, and I just want to check that the data says approve in it so that I'll know which button they clicked. You can see how this could take much longer than an hour. Okay, so this one's going to be my asking me to fill in. Blah, 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 whatever. I just skipped a couple of them. Yeah, time flies when you're having fun. That is right, Craig. Oh, and those of you who are in our ultimate members on my site, we have our office hours meeting at 8 a.m. Central tomorrow morning. So y'all have had a lot of great ideas. I'm looking forward to digging into those. Okay, so now I go as Garth, the manager, and Garth will reject it. And let's go look at the data one more time. So let's see. Oh yeah, see, submit action ID reject. So that is how I would know. I would just go use that data to be able to tell what he did. Now, one thing you can do is, see, it's got kind of little levels in here. So Notepad++ is going to be good for being able to drill in and see kind of what the levels are. Like that. So these are all sort of at the top level. So submit action ID reject is the only thing that came in as their response. So let's see. So then, I don't want to get too in the weeds of that, but what you could do next is you could do a SharePoint action. So if you have a SharePoint list of travel requests, you could go create an item in a list or update an existing item. Like maybe the first thing that's a trigger in here is an item getting created in SharePoint, and that's going through all these steps or getting approved, and then you want to just maybe do an update item action and go update it and say that it was approved, or maybe even use the built-in content approval. So just all the other concepts in Flow that you can think of, you could use those to, talk back and forth to various other services. And I showed you how you can use dynamic data and how you could go dig in even when you can't see the data. So one more thing that I was going to try, and this one was, which one was it? Oh, another thing to keep in mind is that there is the possibility that these could time out. Just like things in Flow time out when you're waiting for stuff, it happens. Flows don't last forever. So you might want to do a parallel branch in your Flow, and while you're doing your waiting for your adaptive card, go ahead and do a parallel branch and have something happen so you'll know if it timed out, or if you wanted to do something again, or go send somebody an email, or whatever you want to happen. This is where you can say, if adaptive timed out, then go down this other branch and define what you want to happen. So, but keep in mind, these will time out because you'll have people that aren't paying attention or aren't in Teams, or they're on vacation or something. It'll time out, and then it won't be waiting for them anymore. And then whatever happens next, it won't do the next thing. So definitely important to keep that in mind. And then another one, which is this one I was trying to do. Oh yeah, I was trying to do something dynamic with, and this is going to be like one of those trial and error as we go live type of things, but I was kind of ramping it up, and I wanted to see if I manually trigger a flow and fill in. I have a bunch of hotels I can pick from, and then the person triggering the flow can just check one or more hotels, and then that's going to ask somebody to pick out of that list of hotels. So Let's go. I ran it because I wanted to see what the data looks like. And that one's actually waiting for something. I'll just cancel whatever it's waiting for. Okay, so when I get this data about whatever hotels that I pick, this is what it looks like. The two options that I select in the multi-select thing. So this is what the raw data looks like. So I need to know this because I need to know if I want to be able to have some dynamic list of stuff presented to somebody in an adaptive card. I need to know this is how, I need to know how to structure the data. So let's go look at, let's see, I cancel this, so it shouldn't still be sitting there waiting, but okay, let me go edit it. So let me copy this syntax real quick and edit that. Okay, so this is actually one of the templates that I picked. It was a little template that said pick a hotel, but instead of just having this list of hard-coded hotel names like it had, I wanted to make it only give the person the choices that I picked up here. So now I'd have to figure out how to structure my data so that it looks like that. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do that just in 4 minutes, but this is hopefully a good lesson in flow and being able to dig into the raw data and dig into how, like, being able to put your dynamic data in the adaptive card, being able to have sort of an approval process that doesn't, it's not restrictive like the out-of-the-box approvals. Now, the out-of-the-box approvals action is cool because it actually lets them, it puts it in the approvals list with just all the approvals from everywhere that are waiting for that person, and it has it in the whole approval system. So if you're doing the post and adaptive cards, and even if you're asking people to approve and reject, that's one thing that you're going to be missing, is having it be part of the approval system. I found it in the real world with people using approvals, they don't ever look at that anyway. Unfortunately, I don't know why. But so I'm not sure, it might not be a priority for you. It might not matter that it's not using that actual approval system, but it does give you that little rich interface where you can provide somebody a form to fill out and collect all their responses and even have dynamic data in the form, which, you know, that's a pretty complex concept, but it's easy to just kind of place the dynamic data in there just directly in that flow interface. Let's see. Great. I'm glad you're getting a lot of ideas. I really want to hear your ideas because, again, I'm not very creative. So I just see all these little cool templates that it provides, and I think about all these hundreds of connectors that exist in Flow and just all the massive amount of possibilities of cool stuff you could do, but I can't think of anything in particular. So, yeah, let's see. No, there isn't like a keep alive function in Flow. You would have to have it so that it goes somewhere and does something that might trigger a flow again, or like create an item in SharePoint that maybe will go trigger the flow. You'd have to kind of finagle it to make it do whatever you want it to do next. There isn't just a way to go loop it back up to the top. Yeah, cool. Thanks everybody for coming. And next week, so there's a new, Joelle told me about this. She's going to be doing this next week. So we're not going to have voting because there's a new PowerShell function that basically gives you the capability to save a whole site as a template. So remember, they took away, like a while back, a year or two ago, they took away the ability to save a whole site as a template. So now we have the ability to use this new PowerShell function to sort of get an entire site and to be able to have it as a template to then use in a site design and be able to apply that site design and have that whole site template sort of appear, populate. So that's pretty huge. That's a PowerShell command. I think they announced back at Ignite, but it just now came out. So Joel's going to be doing that next week. Fun stuff. And remember, my office hours, for those of you who are Ultimate, my office hours, that's tomorrow morning at 8. And I'll send an email about that shortly. All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming. That was pretty fun, right? Bye. Over and out.